would my chaplain's representative, Reverend Ruth Beckett, please open the meeting with a prayer. This allows time for personal reflection before we start the business of the meeting.
Heavenly Father, as this council gathers together this evening, we ask for your spirit of unity to be present. Help those here to put aside any personal agendas or differences and work together in harmony towards the common goal of serving the people of Torbay. We remember the words in Psalm 133, how good and pleasant it is when God's people dwell in unity. Let this be the aim while members engage in discussions and make decisions that impact others. We pray that with your guidance and grace, this meeting will achieve a sense of unity and all members will work together effectively. May the conversations be good-humoured and filled with love and respect for one another. May the agreed actions reflect this unity. Father, I thank you for each person here present with their willingness to serve their community. And so I ask you to bless them now. The blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be upon you now and always. In the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Ruth Beckett. Please be seated. Before I go any further, I think it might be wise, if you wish to remove any jackets this evening, because it is rather warm in here. The purpose of this meeting is to deal with a number of major issues for the well-being of Torbay and best interests of the community. My role as Civic Mayor is to ensure that today's agenda is dealt with efficiently and to allow fairness throughout discussions. As you are aware, the meeting is governed by strict procedures and standing orders. To make sure that the meeting is run fairly, I expect healthy discussion and respectful speeches by councillors, and I will not allow repetition. I will also not allow any disrespectful personal comments against other councillors, barracking, talking across the chamber, or talking loudly amongst yourselves. If I see any of these behaviours, I will stop the debate, call the meeting to order, and I will not hesitate to use standing orders to remove councillors from the meeting. If members wish to make a point of order or personal explanation, I will consider on a case-by-case basis when I take these. Although standing orders allow individuals to be seated during their speeches, I would prefer, if whenever possible, councillors to stand when addressing the council so that you can be clearly seen and heard. When speaking, please ensure your microphone is turned on. If members wish to leave the meeting before it is finished, please follow Standing Order A2 5.7 and give your apologies before you leave via the Head of Governance Support. Please note that we are live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings of the Council meeting will be recorded. Please can attendees refrain from watching the live stream, as this will cause interference for our viewers. We are not expecting any fire alarm testing today. In the event of evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave by the nearest exit. The Riviera Centre staff will assist you. Once outside, please assemble the front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Please also ensure that all mobile phones and iPads are turned to silent. I will call a break if the meeting is going beyond 7 p.m. Are there any apologies for absence?
Mr Mayor, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Madison. Group leaders, are there any further apologies?
Councillor Steve Darling MP has sadly tested positive for COVID and has decided not to share. And Councillors Pentney, Verdi and Fox have given their apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. I propose that the minutes of the annual meeting of the Council, adjourned annual meeting of the Council and the extraordinary meeting of the Council held on 16th of May 2024, 20th of June 2024 and 3rd of July 2024 respectively be signed as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will now take the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Have members any non-pecuniary or disclosable pecuniary interests in any of the matters on today's agenda? Have officers any personal interests in any of the matters on today's agenda? I myself have no announcements to make. As the leader of the council, any announcements that he wishes to make?
Thank you indeed, Mr. Mayor. I do have two announcements. I'd like to start off by congratulating both Councillor Steve Darling and Caroline Voden on becoming the new MPs for Torbay and South Devon. I did write to them both on day one of their new positions and invited them to come to spend half a day to visit some of the locations across the bay that, as part of the levelling up monies that we are continuing, and to ask for them their continued help to push that ambitious regeneration programme across the line. Of course, Councillor Steve Darling is fully up to speed with that, but Caroline, I'm sure, would benefit from knowing where the council is in particular. I have further been in communication with the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, to continue the devolution discussions that we were almost ready to conclude with the previous government before the elections. Those conversations, including Devon, are ongoing, and I'll be more than happy to provide a further update as soon as more information is available to share. Thank you. Thank you.
I understand that the Chief Executive and the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator have no announcements to make. I would like to vary the order of business on today's agenda to enable item 8 on the agenda, notice of motion appointment of the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator, to be considered after item 10 of the Deputy Civic Mayor. We have a question from Mr. Paul Fraser regarding Torquay Pavilion. Please refer to page 21. Mr. Fraser, welcome to the meeting. Would you please take a seat at the microphone? You have 5 minutes to present your question, and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. This includes time for any supplementary questions you may have.
It's nearly 112 years since the pavilion's grand opening in 1912. Such was the excitement that day that a riot nearly broke out. Fast forward to now, and excitement has given over to anger. We understand how we got here. It began with that infamous MDL lease of 1985. It continued with the 2012 decision to negotiate the sale of new leases on the Marina Car Park, Pavilion and Carey Green. 6 years of dither followed before the council granted developer NJG unlawful planning permission in 2018, quashed by the High Court through a community judicial review. Obvious to anyone who really looked at the proposals, they didn't stand up economically or legally to basic scrutiny. Meanwhile, from 2013, experts recommended taking immediate action to stop water ingress harming the building. 11 years later, after millions of pounds of profound and preventable damage, the failure to act on those recommendations continues. It's quite the scandal, and there's more. A year ago, the deputy leader criticised the opposition for not fixing in 4 years the hideous mess they inherited. With a global pandemic, rampant inflation, and a pavilion that was already semi-derelict. Yet he was hopeful last July that his administration would have good news within 12 months at the very latest. It's been 12 months. The last major update was 7 months ago, in December, when we were told we had a now signed £10 million deal to restore the building, part funded through the lease surrender. That wasn't good news because it wasn't true. The leader of the council confirmed subsequently that the paperwork has not yet been signed. An officer told me far more recently that MDL still hold the lease, meaning no deal. Nobody should have celebrated before the victory, much less misled the public. In May, vandals smashed windows in the pavilion. Spotted by members of the Community Watch, created by our Save Torquay Pavilion campaign, the first was sufficient to provide intruder access. The next was spotted by a regular Torquay visitor. The next was spotted, and we contacted, actually, the director of Pride in Place, imploring the proactive boarding up of the remaining exposed windows before somebody torches it. It happens quite a bit round here. Neither us nor the Torbay and ward councillors who followed up on our behalf received a reply. With no action, security for that building is falling to locals and tourists. Bravo. We're told the listed pavilion is, well, the jewel in the crown at the heart of Torquay, and that it's a priority. I wish I lived in the parallel universe where that was true. A year after the promise of progress, all we've seen is a building compound dumped outside the front door whilst it continues to rot. There's no excuse for failing to secure that building, for failing to update the public with accurate information, and for failing to stop the continued neglect of that building. We're tired of meaningless platitudes. We want answers, accountability, and action. Therefore, what is the latest update with regards to MDL's lease surrender, the proper securing of the building from vandals and arsonists, and the start of remedial works? We're all dying to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Would the Cabinet Member of Place Development and Economic Growth, Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a reply?
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Mr. Fraser, for those kind words. Good news, and I can announce it today that the Council and MDL have agreed the terms of the lease surrender with the date of the 30th of September as the actual surrender date. The legal team have been instructed to formalise the surrender. The responsibility of the security of the building continues to rest with MDL until the date of surrender. We have alerted MDL to our concerns and have requested the site is inspected regularly and any weaknesses addressed. MDL have consented to allow the Council to begin to undertake some non-instructive surveys, measurements and the production of the building model. This has been going on over the past few weeks. The detail will assist in managing the listed building consent, pre-commencement conditions, procurement of the contractor, and identify costs of the opening of works. It is envisaged that the opening up works will commence on the site on October of this year. The opening up work and the facilitate the design for the permanent restoration and is needed to develop and submit the LBC for the main work as well as producing the final cost plan. I said it's only just over 12 months. This has been hanging around the council for years, as you well know, with the MDL contract. We made the decision when we were elected to make decisions, make hard decisions. And one of them was to settle with MDL so it came back into council hands and we could get on with the project. It has taken longer than we anticipated, I agree, and I apologise for that. But we are still committed to find a solution for the pavilion, to get it back to its former glory and make it the gem of Torquay. We are sorry that it has taken this long, but if you take over the period of administration after administration that have talked but not delivered, just over 12 months we have delivered. September the 30th is the date that it will be signed. It will come back into Torbay Council hands, and from that moment onwards, and we have been over the last few weeks, we can get on with it to restore it. Thank you, Mr. Fraser, for coming and highlighting it. I didn't want to say anything before this because obviously it was going through the legal team, but we can now confirm 30th of September, good news story. If we're not further forward in 12 or 6 months' time, come back to the full council and hold me to account. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fraser, you may ask a supplementary question as long as it is relevant to your original question and within your 5 minutes. You would like to ask a supplementary question, you have 35 seconds remaining. Thank you.
I would. Thank you, Councillor Lewis, for the update. It's good to hear that we might be getting somewhere, although I feel like we have been very close for a number of years now, and it's never quite got there. My main concern in the intervening period is that the pavilion is at risk from vandals and arsonists. It concerns me that we are still relying on MDL to do those things because I've seen no evidence that they are doing those things. So until we start work on October the 1st or whenever it is, how are we going to make sure that they actually secure the building? At the very least, boarding up the exposed windows and doing the other things they need to do. Unblocking the drains would be another one.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Would the Cabinet Member for Place Development and Economic Growth, Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a reply?
Thank you very much, and I can assure Mr. Fraser that we will take a keen interest, because if it is becoming our building on the 30th of September, we don't want it to deteriorate anymore with vandals and other things. So we will be onto MDL to make sure that they keep it in good condition, as good as they can at this moment, but security-wise, for us to take over on the 30th of September. So I can assure you, we don't want any vandals or anything else happening within the next few weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Please take your seat back in the audience. Thank you. I move to item 7, members' questions. The questions and answers have been circulated and are noted as submitted. Members are available on your iPads under These are available on your iPads under late reports pack.
But they're not, they've been emailed.
But they're not, because they've been emailed. I will ask for any supplementary questions for those members asking a supplementary question. It must arise directly out of the original question or the reply. I may remind members that the supplementary questions shall not include a statement. I will be interrupting if I consider your supplementary question is a statement. Please note that there is a time limit of 1 minute to ask a supplementary question. The response time for each supplementary question is 3 minutes, and the overall maximum time for members' questions is 30 minutes. First round, question 1. I refer to question 1 in respect of homophobic abuse against residents in Torbay care homes. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Just a very quick one, please, Mr. Mayor. In the end of the first paragraph, it states that the NHS Foundation Trust have not reported any complaints regarding homophobia. If I could just ask the Cabinet member whether this is likely that there haven't been any complaints, or whether the data capturing system might not tag homophobia or LGBT issues, so therefore they wouldn't be captured, if you get my meaning. Thank you.
Councillor Tranter, please provide a response.
I think we've discussed before about the NHS's Paris system, and that it doesn't currently capture all the data, and that it is being redone at the moment. That's hopefully going to be launched very soon. And it certainly that data like that will be captured in the new system. So unfortunately, it's possible that incidents have happened and haven't been able to capture on there. Sometimes we can capture things in words on the Paris system, but it doesn't necessarily go into the tick box thing that captures statistics. So unfortunately, that could be happening, but we have not had any reports of incidents to us.
Thank you. Councillor Long, would you like to receive a reply for Councillor Darling, Councillor Steve Darling's question?
I wouldn't. Thank you.
Then we should go to question 3 in respect of of the Chilcot Memorial in St Mary Church. Councillor George Darling.
No supplementary.
Do you have a supplementary question? No. Thank you. I refer to question 4 in respect of the increase in budget for the events team. Councillor Cowell, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure Councillor Thomas J would agree with me that the whole purpose of the £100,000 added to this year's budget was to support and increase the capacity of the events team. Why then is it that a lot of that activity is now going to be diverted to managing the new resident discounts card scheme? And why has £54,000 out of a total of £133,000 been applied to employ the strategic lead for culture and heritage, a valuable post, but not one that is directly there to support the delivery of events, when we know that the events team struggle to support the air show, the Bay of Lights, and a plethora of other smaller events that are valuable to Torbay, its residents and its visitors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jackie Thomas, please provide a response.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. I'm not aware of any money being used out of the budget for the residents' discount scheme. So that's the first part. The second one, I went to the Electric Bay event this weekend. I spoke to Phil Black and the team, and basically they are very happy with the way the money has been introduced into our events, culture and heritage events. So in order to deliver our events, it's not surprising that we do need a cultural officer because some of our events are surrounding culture. Also, Martin Thomas, who was the lead member for the Culture and Heritage post, when he came over to the council from the TDA, he didn't come over with a budget. So we've had to use some of the budget from the 100,000, which is important in delivering our culture events as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I refer to question 5 in respect of Victoria Skate Park. Councillor Johns, do you have a supplementary question?
I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I now refer to question 6 in respect of the consultation on the closure of Victoria Skate Park. Councillor Nicolau, do you have a supplementary question?
I'm happy with the response, but in reference to council officers working with police partners, I would love to be shared that information, so it would help with the funding of the new skate park that we're hoping to build, if possible. Thank you.
That was the question. Councillor Billings, please provide a response.
In relation to that question, I'd confirm that on a very regular basis, Swissco work with the police. You have seen the fantastic joint working that went on earlier in the week in relation to a traveller encampment at Clennon Valley. We continue to do so, and in relation to this, if there's specific information that would be useful to a bid, I'm sure we'll share it with yourself, with other councillors and with the community. Clearly, we all want to work together. It's how we get stuff done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question 7 has been withdrawn. I refer to question 8 in respect of the child's play area on the Willows. Councillor Long, do you have a supplementary question?
Just a very brief one, please, Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to assume, but just to ask Councillor Lewis whether when the Divisional Director for Economy, Environment and Infrastructure gets a response from Cavanagh Homes, presumably you might be kind enough to share that with me. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis.
Councillor Long, of course I will. I'll share everything with you. As soon as we have a response, we will let you know, and of course the other ward councillors. Thank you.
We move to question 9 in respect of the Crossways project. Councillor Johns, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the answer. But the proposal, would you say it actually mirrors the proposal this administration put forward back in 2022? Would you not say it actually mirrors it? It's very similar.
Councillor Chris Lewis, please provide a response.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johns. It is similar. I mean, where it's changed is when we got Wilmot, Dixon and Milligan as our partners, they were able to go out there in the marketplace and find out what we can do with the site, what we can't do with the site. And we're hoping that the answer I've given will actually be the end user. But of course, nothing is certain, as you know, because we were well over budget when we took over. And again, it's taken us a long time, just over 12 months, to evaluate all of these. And of course, we've only had our partnership for the last few months, who hopefully can bring in outside investors and others to be able to deliver some of the projects that we couldn't deliver in the past. So it's a good news story. Hopefully, Crossways will be developed out, and we will see it for the good people of Paynton, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Johns, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to question 10 in respect of the 65 bus route. Councillor George Darling, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary, Mr. Mayor.
I refer to question 11 in respect of the Old Way Working Party group. Councillor Johns, do you have a supplementary question?
Not so much a question, just something, just want to spot on. I didn't really feel it was a proper answer. I would like to have maybe a conversation sometime with you, Councillor Thomas, just clarify things. Is that all right? Thank you.
I think that was a question. Councillor
It's
Thomas.
certainly in my mind finished with a question mark. No problem, more than happy to have a conversation. I did try to put it into a form of words, what I'd kind of explained within the chamber before. I think the main thing to understand is that there will be, under the cabinet model, an Old Way working group, whatever you want to call it. It'll have a new remit, and that new remit will be to spend the 9 million, 10 million, or even 13 million pounds for the first phase. So that's what the focus will be on, and you're more than happy to come along. But happy to have a conversation after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings a close to members' questions. We now move to item 9, the election of the Worshipful Mayor of Torbay. Can Councillor Strang please put his motion to the council.
Good afternoon. It's an honour to stand here and propose what I think is my first motion in the Chamber, and I promise I won't waffle on. Councillor Hannah Stevens has done an exemplary job of supporting our outgoing Mayor, Councillor Mark Spagania, over the past 14 or so months, in what have been, to put it lightly, turbulent times. It's only right that, having taken the apprentice position, that she now be allowed to do the full job. Hannah has a passion for helping the residents of the Bay and does so with enthusiasm and passion. Councillor Stevens' youth also brings fresh ideas on how we work for Torbay and what is needed. Hannah is my fellow councillor, ward councillor, and I think it would be great for our town, Brixham, to have the Mayor. It's only right that Councillor Stevens succeeds Councillor Spagania to be the next Honourable Mayor of Torbay, and I look forward to seeing the great charity work she will achieve and the events she will attend. I would like to see us put down differences of the past 6 to 8 months and get behind her, and I propose that Hannah Stevens is elected Mayor of Torbay.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I'd like to second Councillor Stevens as Mayor of Torbay, and I'd like to also thank you, Mark, for your work that you've done as Mayor of Torbay. I'm honoured here to stand here and second the nomination of Councillor Stevens. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of working closely with Councillor Stevens and observing her dedication and resilience and overwhelming commitment to the community as a whole in her role as Deputy Mayor. So I have the great pleasure in actually seconding her. So thank you.
Thank you. We now move to debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And when this was discussed at the council leadership group, I mentioned that the Liberal Democrat group were very disappointed that the mayoral and overview and scrutiny coordinator positions were coming forward at this time. We feel that they are premature and that this should happen after the mediation that is set to take place shortly. There is a real risk that the votes, if they are proceeded with this evening, will further inflame feelings and entrench them further. For several months, the council has not shown itself in the best light, to put it mildly. We've had 2 car crash meetings last December and indeed at the annual meeting. This council is in no overall control. The administration has 18 seats and the opposition groups have 18 seats, and this council will only work if we work together and listen and take on board what each side is saying. Following the peer review, we have agreed there will be a mediation process. There is real hurt on this side, and I understand that there is hurt on the administration side, and mediation will hopefully help heal that and enable us to move on. We have not proposed someone to fill this position because we hope that as a result of the mediation there will be a more equitable sharing of positions on this authority to reflect the no overall control situation, and that feel that this position and the deputy and the overview and scrutiny coordinator positions should be filled then. The Liberal Democrats regret that the mayoral role has become politicised over the last year or so, and that the position is perceived as being nothing more than being there to vote in favour of what the administration brings forward. However, on this side, we respect the civic position that the mayoral role should be, and therefore we will be abstaining on the mayoral votes. Thank you.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Long has actually said a lot of what myself and Councillor Emile and indeed Madison have been discussing in recent weeks. We all know that in the last 6 to 8 months in particular, the political temperature has been beyond 100 degrees Celsius. It's probably the time, and I've been saying this for several weeks in conversations privately and a bit more openly, that we need to turn that dial down on the politics of Torbay. Probably worsened and the temperature was increased in the run-up to the general election. Well, that's all behind us now, so we can start putting politics behind us and thinking about the best interests of the Bay. I agree with Councillor Long that because of the current situation and the hung nature of Torbay Council, the role that the current mayor has occupied has been somewhat politicised, and we have to make sure that moving forward, as a result of genuine arbitration and positive conversations across this chamber, with all 36 members involved, we can find that suitable way to move forward. Councillor Emile and I have discussed this, and we too will be abstaining. That is not a reflection on any of the individuals that are nominated for either the mayor or deputy mayor role. It's more of a reflection of the current situation and recent history. But I'm sure we both wish the mayor-elect and deputy mayor-elect a successful remaining civic year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thomas D.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to thank Councillor Cowell for his good wishes for the Worshipful Mayor and Deputy Mayor elect. Obviously, this evening is a ceremonial event, and I think I don't want to go over the past. It's been mentioned from Councillor Long and Councillor Cowell, but I think what is important is the council need to elect a Worshipful Mayor and a Deputy Mayor. We are well on the course through this year. One thing we can't do is we can't stop the time, we can't turn back to the beginning of the year with the Worshipful Mayor. So whoever that is, that individual has already lost the opportunity for the particular charities that they will wish to support, and we'll hear more about that this evening. So it is right that we deal with this side of the summer, otherwise we're going to be into the winter. And I don't intend to say anything else. Thank you.
If there's no more debate, Councillor Strang.
I'm happy to move to the vote.
We shall now move to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Abstentions. And abstentions. And the motion is carried. Please talk amongst yourselves. Please be seated.
Members, Councillor Stevens will now make the declaration of acceptance of office and take the oath of allegiance before me as proper officer of the council. Councillor Stevens, would you like to join me at the lectern? Councillor Stevens, please make your declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Hannah Stevens, having been elected to the office of the Worshipful, the Mayor of Torbay, declare that I take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
Councillor Stevens will now take the oath of allegiance.
I, Hannah Stevens, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors according to law. Over my term of office as Civic Mayor, I have chosen two charities close to my heart to support: Play Torbay and the Fisherman's Mission. I am pleased to announce that Ian Stevens will be my consort and Reverend Angela Sumner has agreed to be my chaplain for the coming municipal year. Finally, I would like to say that I am honoured to represent Torbay and promise to promote our area to fulfil the role of Civic Mayor to the best of my ability. Would Councillor By propose a vote of thanks to Councillor Spagania and his consort, Mr. Christopher Ashfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And may I first congratulate you and wish you every success in your term of office. How wonderful to have someone young and from Brixham to boot in the role of Civic Mayor. We were the future once. So there we go. And in the case of some of my colleagues, that was a long, long time ago. But there we are. We wish you every success in the year ahead. It is absolutely my privilege and pleasure to propose a vote of the most sincerest thanks and appreciation to the outgoing Mayor, Councillor Mark Spagania, and his consort, Mr. Chris Ashfield, for the manner in which they have undertaken their duties in the role of Civic Mayor and consort for the last 12 months. We had marvellous Mandy Darling. We've been very blessed with our mayors, I have to say. We had marvellous Mandy Darling, and then we moved on to magnificent Mark Spagania. And if I'm allowed to make a personal point, you've looked the part. You really have up there, you have looked the part. You're reminiscent of some of the portraits of our early Torquay mayors.
all over that staircase, that marble staircase, which I climb with increasing difficulty. When you go into the town hall, you have looked the part. It has been a difficult year at times, but you have chaired the meetings, I would say, with a very good nature and with aplomb. So I'm sure you're now looking forward to a rest from your duties, a bit of a break, but it has been difficult. You came into it new. I think you've done extremely well. Well done for your charities, your fundraising for Rowcroft and the Torbay Hospital League of Friends. I'm very pleased that I've been able to support some of those events. I'm so sorry that I missed your concert, your opera, your night of opera when I was away. I know you've said to me the absolute highlight of your year was to meet the Archbishop of Canterbury. I must say you carried out your civic duties with great dignity, the commemoration for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, leading us all in the remembrance services last November. And I know that you had that wonderful way with your mayoral cadets. So absolutely fantastic, the work that you have done with the mayoral cadets. So I'm delighted now to propose a vote of thanks. Enjoy your rest. You've been a magnificent mayor. It's been a tricky year, but you've done a great job. So many thanks on behalf of all members, I'm sure. Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second that vote of thanks. Happy to second the vote of thanks.
Thank you. I move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carried. I will now present the past Civic Mayor badge to Councillor Spigania.
The role of Civic Mayor is a privileged position, one of great importance. Personally, I gave it all and I thoroughly enjoyed it. At times, it has been difficult choices and decisions to be made. Raising the profile of the Civic Mayor was my first aim. Reaching out to the community was also very important. I had a very hard act to follow after Mandy Darling. I've had many engagements that have left a lasting impression, though I cannot choose a favourite. Many engagements are citizenship ceremonies and raising the profile of many worthwhile, important charities that we have in Torbay, whose work is vital to the well-being of our communities. Remembrance Day, it's a very wet cenotaph. The Burma Star Memorial Service, anniversary of D-Day landings, and more recently the 80th anniversary, and the service to remember our very own Home Guard. Welcoming the Archbishop of Canterbury was definitely a highlight of my term in office, along with working with brilliant cadet forces across Torbay and the introduction of mayoral cadets. All this wouldn't have been possible without the help of the council officers, all of you as members, the residents of Torbay, and Chris, my consort. I wish Hannah the very best. And please remember to enjoy and have fun. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I now move to item 10, election of Deputy Civic Mayor. Can Councillor Tolchard please put her motion to the Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to propose Councillor Barbara Lewis to serve as Deputy Civic Mayor for the remainder of the 2024-25 municipal year. Barbara said, "I don't want a fuss," so no fuss. But suffice to say that since being first elected in 2015, Barbara has done an exemplary job as councillor for the residents of Torbay, first of all for Roundham with Hyde and now with the ward of Preston. She's also done a brilliant job as chairman of licensing, which I know she enjoys very much, and she served on the planning committee, and I've served on that with her, and she always does her homework. In her own words, "I'm not at all political, but I love people." And that's always shone through in everything that Barbara does. And after all, that's what makes a good councillor. That's what we're here for. And she's also a good friend. I know she'll do a splendid job in supporting Councillor Hannah Stevens, our new mayor, throughout the coming months, and I wish them both well. Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm delighted and honoured to second Councillor Barbara Lewis in the role of Deputy Mayor. I have known Barbara for a few years now when she first met Councillor Chris Lewis. We soon became friends as well as colleagues, as we both started our journeys as Torbay councillors. We supported each other both professionally and personally, which is why I am in no shadow of a doubt that Barbara will be an asset in her new role of Deputy Mayor. I am confident that Barbara will carry out her duties in a professional and courteous manner whilst helping our residents throughout the Bay. She will do a fantastic job supporting Councillor Hannah Stevens in her new role of Mayor. They will make a great team as they attend events, support charitable organisations and proudly represent Torbay in everything they say and do. I do hope everyone cross-party will work together and support Councillor Barbara Lewis in this new role of Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I now invite debate. If there's no debate, Councillor Tolchard, right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think there's anything that we can add at this juncture, but suffice to say to wish them, both Hannah and Councillor Barbara Lewis, well for the coming year. Happy to move to the vote. Thank you.
I move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, motion carried. Would Councillor Barbara Lewis please come forward on the stage to make the declaration of acceptance of office?
Councillor Barbara Lewis will now make the declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Barbara Lewis, having been elected to the office of Deputy Civic Mayor of the Borough of Torbay, declare that I take the office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
Thank you. I wish to announce that my husband, Councillor Chris Lewis, will be my escort during my term of office, and also wish to express my thanks to the Council for the honours bestowed on me. I would like to thank Councillor Anna Tolchard and Councillor Jackie Thomas for their kind words and encouragement. I'm also looking forward to working alongside Councillor Hannah Stephens in the year ahead. I'm sure we will do a good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now call a short adjournment to enable Councillor Barbara Lewis to take her seat on the dais and Councillor Spigania to take his seat in the chamber. Thank you. Please be seated. I move to item 8, notice of motion, appointment of overview and scrutiny coordinator. Please refer to page 27. Would Councillor David Thomas please put his motion to the Council as attached to the agenda, notice of which was given in accordance with Standing Order A13.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor, and many, many congratulations on your new position. I fully hope that you enjoy the coming year, or what's left of it. The appointment of Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator is something that we kind of discussed a little bit at the last meeting, and this is effectively a position that we would have made this decision last month. However, we were not able to do that, as you can clearly see, because Councillor Mark Spagagna at that time was sitting in the role of the Worshipful Mayor. And very kindly, Councillor Twelves agreed to step in for a small period before we could actually get to a position that Councillor Mark Spagagna was no longer sitting as the Worshipful Mayor, and we would be able to put him into that position as Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator. I didn't honestly know how we were going to do that until, of course, the opposition explained how you could previously rescind a decision that had been made for the council. So you learned something new along your political career. So what we are doing, the motion before you, is that decision that was made a few weeks ago to appoint Councillor Twelves as the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator to be rescinded, and that Councillor Mark Spagagna be appointed as the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator and Chairman of the Board for the remainder of the municipal year 24-25. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I now invite debates. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to start off by saying how sorry I am, and I think I can speak for the whole Liberal Democrat group, that Councillor Twelves will no longer be the Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator. Councillor Twelves commanded the respect from across the political divide and worked in a non-political manner and worked to get cross-party consensus on recommendations. So thank you for that, and we're very sorry that you're not going to be in that role going forward. The Liberal Democrat group feels that the coordinator of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee should have experience of this committee, experience of working in a non-party political way, and have shown some interest in the work of the committee. As this is not the case, the Lib Dem group will be voting against this item. Members opposite have also argued in the past that the Overview and Scrutiny Board should be chaired by the opposition, but clearly the administration want to mark their own homework. As with the mayoral votes, we have not proposed someone to fill this position because we have hopes that the mediation will lead to a more equitable sharing of seats on committees, etc., that reflects the no overall control 1818 situation. And we feel that the position should be filled after that mediation. And that mediation, I'm afraid to say, Madam Mayor, is sorely needed. In this meeting tonight, we have had a major update on the capital project, and we're meant to be working in no surprises, and the ward councillors were not updated beforehand, and there was no mention of this update coming at the council leadership group meeting. So we feel very much that the disrespect to this side continues, And also there has been this evening the bending of the Constitution under the mayoral vote, which is not in the spirit which allows a councillor to vote for themselves, which has not happened before. So that partly explains our vote this evening, that sadly the disrespect to this side continues. Thank you.
Councillor Law.
Thank you. So the role of Overview and Scrutiny Coordinator is an important role in the local authority. Best practice suggests that the role has equity with the executive. And Overview and Scrutiny, for members of the public who will be watching the live streaming, just to explain a little bit, plays an important non-political role in a council in ensuring that the council's policies, projects and performance are fit for purpose and represent best value and outcomes for our residents. The coordinator is the chairperson of the main Overview and Scrutiny Board. There are 2 sub-boards. So as you can see, it is an important role in ensuring transparency and accountability by the local authority. Yet here we are in Torbay being asked to vote for the 5th coordinator to this role in just 13 months. And at a time when we really need some stability in Torbay, we are being asked to support the nomination of a councillor who, due to their previous role, and this is not a personal criticism, it's inherent in the role he was taking, as he's not been permitted to sit on any of the council's committees in order to gain any experience. So for such an important position that is supposed to be support a non-political board, it certainly seems to be being used as a bit of a political football by this administration. As members will know, we've requested mediation to help overcome some of the obstacles, politics and tensions that has arisen as a result of Torbay being a no overall control council. And we did ask that any decision on this further change of chair was postponed until after this mediation had taken place. However, as we can see by the motion before us today, that's not been accepted, and we therefore find ourselves in a position where we will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and may I offer you my sincere congratulations and best wishes for the remainder of this municipal year, and to the Deputy, who I'm sure will represent Torbay well at Lords at some point in the next 12 months. Like my colleagues, Councillors Long and Law, sounds like a law firm that, I would like to echo my appreciation to Councillor Twelves. Indeed, I actually spoke to her after the last Overview and Scrutiny Board to say how disappointed I was that she wasn't going to be continuing in the role, because in the early days when I was Councillor Law's Vice Chair, I felt that we worked really well together, and I think there was a real positive process with the ONS at that time. So I also am disappointed that for the sake of a few weeks that we're waiting for the mediation process, that we are in a situation that we are appointing the ONS coordinator tonight. We don't know what the outcome of that mediation process will be, particularly in regard to the objective that we need to be seeking in terms of greater equity to reflect the 18-18 split that exists within Torbay Council. And the ONS is one of those most senior roles that actually should not be a political role. It is, I've always believed, the sort of role that you would expect of a parliamentary select committee in terms of being able to properly scrutinise the work of the council, not just policy, but in terms of strategy and operational. I feel that we are somewhat putting the cart before the horse at this stage, and I think it does seem, to be honest, that, you know, as Councillor Law pointed out, 5 ONS coordinators in 14 months. That almost appears and feels like as many coordinators as there were Conservative Prime Ministers in the last 18 months. Thankfully, that farce has come to an end. So, likewise, I'm not in a position along with Councillor Emile, to support this motion tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no further debates, Councillor Lewis, you reserved your right.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. Takes getting used to. I don't want to spoil the apple cart, but I think it is a bit rich what Councillor Long and others have said. The first chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, when you won in 2019, was one Councillor John Howgate, who had never been on the council before, never been a councillor, so had no experience whatsoever. Councillor Douglas Dunbar was the mayor. She went in, when she stopped being mayor, into being the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny. Exactly what we're doing. But when you do it, it's all right. When we do it, we're being nasty. I'm trying not to be nasty. For 4 years, when you had your administration, when we had a large number of councillors, you took the chair of Overview and Scrutiny every year. Not only that, we were restricted to 2 questions per debate. Which
personal explanation, please.
Which
Mayor.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Long. Councillor Lewis, please finish.
Yeah. If you're going to deny it, every time we went there, and unfortunately it's not recorded, but the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny did start in the intro and said that those who don't sit on Overview and Scrutiny will have 2 questions each. I'm sorry if you disagree, but that is the honest. Anyway, I don't want to fall out, but it is a bit rich. When I've just explained to you, Councillor Howgate, Councillor Douglas Dunbar, exactly the same. And you're blaming us for it. You know, let's all try and get on. Let's cut out the politics, get on with it. Let's have mediation. When we have the mediation, let's see what comes out of it. We've all got to work together for the greater good of Torbay. And having arguments that I've just blown open doesn't help, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Long, your point of personal explanation.
Thank you very much. And the facts are that the party opposite were not restricted, and that can be seen by viewing those meetings online. And as for the points about Councillor Douglas Dunbar, she at least had attended those meetings despite being mayor, so at least had built up some personal knowledge about that. And I was just simply quoting back at you what you had been arguing to us. So it just appears that you say one thing in opposition and then do another thing when ruling. Thank you.
Councillor David Thomas, your right to reply.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. And you need to remember, within all of this, there is a councillor who's actually named here. Councillor Spagagna, I think, has done an excellent job in the last year. We've just spoken about it. He's been sat up there in a non-political role, selling Torbay. He'll be an absolute asset to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'll read one line from the LGA peer review. And we must remember, when this peer review was done, the chair was sitting with the Liberal Democrats. It says, there needs to be a fundamental reset of Overview and Scrutiny organisationally and politically. And I'll leave it at that and look forward to, I'm not going to say unanimous support, but to at least being able to put Councillor Spagagna into the chair of ONS. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I now move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Motion carried. I move to item 11, Brokenbury Solar Farm. Please refer to page 29. Can Councillor Chris Lewis please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. Brokenbury Solar Farm, which is in Churston, has been through our cabinet and been through your cabinet opposite, I think, and I think hopefully we're all in agreement on this. It is the two fields located off Bridge Road, near to South West Water Treatment Plant. It is a good news story, and as I said, I think this should be cross-party. We did it through Cabinet, we've done it through, you've done it through Council. The borrowing requirement for potential prudential borrowing is £2,750,000. And also, the good news story, as I said the other day on Nightingale, we are actually helping to reduce over 11,000 tonnes of CO2 over the next 25 years, which is a good news story. Providing electricity to South West Water, the treatment plant, for the next 25 years. Heads of terms have been agreed and signed, although, of course, not legally binding. We hope that it will proceed. I think the main not problem, but the main part of this is whether we can get the business plan to going forward, because we've got to get the unit price, which will be agreed by South West Water, agreed by our guys, financial guys, that it does stack up. We are adamant that it must stack up not only for capital, but also for revenue going forward, that it doesn't cost the council money and then we make from it. So I think, Madam Mayor, this is good for Torbay, good for South West Water. They will have electricity coming from only a few yards away. And it's good for the climate change project. So I hope we'll get cross-party support and certainly going ahead, and as soon as we can get the business plan, get cracking and sign the deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second this, and I reserve my rights.
Okay, I now invite debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor Lewis is correct. This item was discussed fully at Cabinet, and this project was indeed started by the last administration, so we are indeed supportive. It's interesting to note, however, that despite the constant refrain of delivery, that this item isn't progressing any faster under this administration than it did under the last. I would like, however, to propose an amendment that has been circulated in advance that's in my name and that of Councillor Cowell. And the reason for doing this is that I remember distinctly the former councillor for Churston with Gampton, Councillor Kennedy, asking for a community dividend similar to that at Nightingale Solar Farm project. That was meant to be being looked into, but because of the local elections, I imagine it never did come back again. Essentially, the amendment states that as the precedent has been set by Nightingale Farm, that the similar scheme should happen at Brokenbury. And as that precedent has been set, we are sure that this amendment will get cross-party support, particularly, I'm sure, from the Churston with Gampton councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Long, do you have a seconder? Councillor Cowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to second and reserve my right.
I now invite debate on the amendment. Councillor David Thomas?
Thank you very much indeed. And it is a great shame that this has come so late in the day. Clearly, it's something that we believe in. We've going to be doing exactly the same in just a moment at Nightingale Solar Farm. But if we actually have a look at what 1 mile straight line distance from Brokenbury is, because I had, and my apologies, that's why I was so busy reading this, that I kind of missed the seconding, and I thank you, Councillor Long, for seconding the minutes early on. But I was looking through that 1 mile, so 1.6 kilometres. 1.6 kilometres includes Broadsands Beach, Churston Golf Club, Elbury Cove, Churston Golf Club, half of Brixham Cricket Club, Churston Grammar School. It does not cover any of the major urban areas. It doesn't touch Boundary Road, doesn't get as far as there. It doesn't touch Brixham. It does cover a little bit of Gampton, and actually it gets down to the River Dart, the head of the River Dart. But there is a huge difference, I think we would all agree, between the deprivation of Barton and Watcombe versus the affluence of Churston with Gampton. So although I would be very happy to support 10%, the wording on this kind of doesn't work for me. It doesn't help any of the people in White Rock. It doesn't help any of the people in Goodrington. It doesn't even get as far as White Rock Primary School. And for those reasons, I can't support the amendment this evening, even though I do support the thinking behind it. And what I'm more than happy to do is, outside of the meeting, take something forward. This is about the opportunity of sitting down and just working this out, because there is absolutely something to be done here, but just a 1 mile within that area when there's so much grass around it, and not that opportunity of hitting conurbations of residents, whereas in the Willows location, a mile around there does take in a lot of residents. So for that reason we can't support, but really happy to take something offline to work up a form of words that we could include in there at a future cabinet meeting. Thank you very much.
Councillor Timon?
Yes, I'd like to add a little bit to what my colleague, Councillor David Thomas, has said. I am one of the ward councillors for Churston with Gampton. And I think that whilst there are some areas, small areas in my ward, which could benefit from this sort of funding, and a few of those are within 1 mile of the solar park, I very much think that it needs, as Councillor Thomas has said, some more creative thinking about how this could be utilised to best effect. We have the opportunity to do that when we are looking at the business plan and coming forward, and I would be very happy as ward councillor to come and talk to you about that at some time in the future. I think it would be just wrong to take and tie ourselves at the moment to something at this point, and for that reason I think I would encourage us all to just put this to one side and say thank you for the thinking. I certainly was unaware that my predecessor, Councillor Kennedy, had put in such a request. It might have been helpful if we'd known that earlier, but you probably didn't know that I didn't know that. So, you know, I'm not trying to say you're wrong, but it would have been more helpful if we'd known that. So I would like to say that even as ward councillor, I recognise the value of that to my ward. I'd like to take this forward and gain some value for my ward, but also for the wider communities of Paignton and Brixham.
Thank you. Councillor Billings?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations. Totally agree with the principle that's behind this. Thank you, Councillors Long and Cowell, for the recognition of the principle. Don't agree with the current wording. Believe we can take this away offline at a separate point, find something that achieves the right result for the community, and appreciate the sentiment, but currently don't support it as worded. I'm sure we can discuss this in another time and get something we can all agree on, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, if there's no further debate on the amendment, Councillor Cowell, you reserved your right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And at last, on this particular project, similar to Nightingale, and what I say now really covers both, it is good news that we're actually making positive progress on these capital projects that are good for the environment. And in the case of Brokenbury, it's good for the community, and it could be good for Broadsands because there's been projects down there, particularly around water sports and so on, that could benefit from a windfall or some match funding or seed funding to get some of those projects that have been talked about for decades down at Broadsands off the ground. And even it could benefit a local sports club because we all know that Brixham Archers are seeking to operate in the field next door, and a little bit of capital investment or support for them and the delivery of that opportunity would probably be most welcome for them. So, you know, I understand the sentiments from the ward councillors. As I say, it could be good for Broadsands and much of Gampton. I disagree with the boundary that Councillor David Thomas has identified, because I did the same exercise on Google Earth today to identify just what the reach would be. But obviously, if it's defeated tonight as an amendment, then we welcome the opportunity of bringing it back through other channels to determine how that money can be put to wider use. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Long, your right of reply as the amendment mover.
I think we probably said enough. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we're happy to go to the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Lewis, your right of reply.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. And I don't want to be naughty on this one, but if it had been, if it had been us that had done it, I thought the new way of working was that we didn't get this at the council meeting. I think the new way of working was that you'd actually consult with the local councillors. If you'd done that, we would have probably come up with some workings. We had the meeting on Tuesday. If we'd done it, said it then, I'm sure the ward councillors and the two leaders would have come up with way of words. But we will, you know, now have a dialogue and see if we can come up with words that go forward, because I think it's a good idea. We just got to look, as Councillor Thomas said, slightly different from Barton and the Willows, because there's more green fields, basically. So we may have to extend the mile or see other ways of doing it, but in principle we agree. It's just a way of getting it together. Thank you very much, Madam.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, the amendment is lost. Is there any further debate on the original motion? Councillor Tyman, you reserved your right.
Yes, I think I just want to say one thing. I think we've talked about the need to find out what the price will be to make sure this works. The next stage of this that will take place, I hope, very quickly after tonight, is that we need to get quotes in and final costings. Once we've got those in, I shall certainly be working to move this forward as quickly as possible. I think it's regrettable that it's taken this long. Discussions with South West Water, I think, were elongated. They took a lot longer than I think anybody anticipated, and I think it's actually quite difficult to bring some of these outside organisations, public organisations, to actually make decisions on a lot of matters. And I think we're actually finding exactly the same statement could be made about the next item when we come to debate it. But just to say, we've got two bits to put together. It's stated in there, a final business case will be then created. I hope we can look at that and we can press the button very quickly when we get that business case to move into action, because we've waited long enough to get this operating and to get the beneficial effects for the climate and for Torbay and for South West Water.
Councillor Lewis.
Very happy to go to the vote, Madam Mayor.
I now move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous and motion is carried. Thank you. I move to item 12, Nightingale Solar Farm. Please refer to page 65. Can Councillor Chris Lewis please put his motion to the Council?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Nightingale Solar Farm, Barton and Watcombe. A lot of consultation has taken place, I know, by the local councillors, by others, taking the ward with you, which is great news. Very similar to the last one, agreed by the previous administration, now coming forward. Recommendation is for 4,151,000. This one's gone up slightly to be able to finance through prudential borrowing. And this one's reducing over 18,000 tonnes of CO2 over the next 25 years. So again, another good news story. Providing electricity to Torbay Hospital, again, heads of terms have been agreed, but of course they're not legally binding, but hopefully that will go forward. We're again waiting for the business plan, business case, so it depends what the price per unit will be. And again, we are adamant that it must cover not only the capital costs, but the revenue costs going forward, and hopefully will provide a good profit which can then be spent in the community. So again, good news story, good for Torbay Hospital, good for Torbay Council, and again, as I said at the Cabinet, another scheme to try and help the world, save the world. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, happy once again to second this motion, and I reserve my rights.
I now invite debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And this was discussed at Cabinet extensively, and this is absolutely, obviously, a project that we will support. And I think just on the climate change element, the last report I saw, and the figures may have changed slightly since then, was that solar in Torbay only provides about 0.6% of renewable energy in the bay. It may have gone up slightly, but obviously these two schemes will hopefully help with that. I would like to propose the amendment that has been circulated previously, just to respond to Councillor Lewis's naughtiness earlier, that under the new ways of working, we have complied with that, because he'll remember that at the awful December meeting, there were amendments being tabled verbally, i.e. not written in the middle of the debate, and these have been written and circulated in advance at the beginning of the meeting, which is in contrast, so we do feel that it does meet that. But essentially, the very simple amendment, which actually was the wording of the amendment actually matches what was agreed verbally at Cabinet, and it's just putting that in writing. So hopefully a very simple one. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Cowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to second, and I would like to think that this will achieve unanimous support because it's a principle of consultation with ward councillors, which I think is beginning to be embedded. So I'm happy to second the amendment as written. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I now invite debate on the amendment. Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you very much indeed. We are happy to accept this amendment, and I don't know if the proposer and seconder are happy to include it, and then there's just one vote. If I don't know if that's acceptable, but we don't have any problems on this side with it at all.
Are the proposer and seconder happy to incorporate that into the original motion?
Very happy, Madam Mayor.
Also happy to accept that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so is there any debate on the amended motion? Councillor Tyman, you reserved your right.
No, happy to pass back to my colleague to sum up.
Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I mean, we're very happy because at Cabinet we agreed that, and maybe at Cabinet we should have made an amendment there and then at the Cabinet, which would have made it easier. But very happy to accept that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous, motion carried. I move to item 13, budget monitoring, Outturn 23-24. Please refer to page 107. Can Councillor Tyman please put his motion to the council? Councillor Tyman, your microphone.
Oh, right, I had pressed it, but obviously it didn't register. Yes, I'm delighted to get up and present the Outturn report for the year 2023-24. It covers two aspects. It looks at what happened last year, and it also makes a couple of recommendations in terms of adjustments to the capital budget. In-year underspend, underspend resulted from overspends on a number of directorates, notably adult services, children's services and pride in place services, but these were more than offset by surplus receipts through financial services, predominantly from Treasury management. We all know the detrimental effect of high interest rates, but they have helped us in exceeding the budgeted level of savings significantly. In that regard, it is important to realise that those sorts of savings, although they may well continue for this year, are unlikely to continue long term, and we cannot therefore expect that position to be repeated year after year. However, we accept the benefit. We're very grateful that has allowed us to produce a total underspend of £678,000. One of the nice things we could do when we get an underspend is we decide what we want to do with it. And the first thing that we are proposing and recommending happens is that we put £400,000 into a reserve for capital expenditure. That's not to spend on capital, that's to spend on investigating projects, and that's going to allow us to move forward without so much worry about what would happen if a project failed and was aborted because it's found to be not viable or no longer needed. One of the worries we've had in the past is that when that happens, you're looking at a write-off. If we have a reserve here for capital expenditure, it will allow us in advance to say we can do those sorts of things, and I think that's going to allow us to move forward at much better speed on a lot of projects. Of course, if we actually have to use this reserve to actually cover losses, we're going to be looking at future of a need to top it up. But let's hope that we don't get projects that need to be aborted of that nature too often. Secondly, we want to transfer the balance, £278,000, to a comprehensive spending reserve, which will be used to support the acceleration of the delivery of Operation Brighter Bay. We put extra money into this year's budget for the Brighter Bay project. I think we're finding that it's not actually making as much difference quickly enough as we would have liked. That's not been helped, I think, by a very wet spring and a lot of growth, putting pressure on the activities, particularly grass cutting, and it's certainly made weeds in my garden, as long as many of the gutters around the bay grow a lot faster than perhaps is normal. So we want to accelerate that, and that will happen in projects as authorised by our Director of Finance, because he has control of what's in the Comprehensive Spending Review Reserve. The other aspects of the report are for the addition of 2 items to the capital budget. The most important one is a £17.5 million increase to the capital budget to cover the Paynton and Preston Coastal
Councillor
Defence
Timon,
Scheme.
you have 30 seconds remaining.
Sorry?
30 seconds
30
remaining.
seconds. That's an important project. It's just gone through planning, and I think it is very, very important and valuable for Paynton. 2 other small things are to enable projects to progress for bricks and port infrastructure and the Paynton Technology Park.
Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to second and reserve my right.
I now invite debate. Long.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I rise to table the amendment that is circulated in my name and that of Councillor Penny. And the report, the reason for this is that the Outturn report has tagged onto it some decisions relating to capital projects which have nothing particularly to do with the Outturn and have to be decided tonight, otherwise funding deadlines, etc., will be missed. And I think the problem with this has been exemplified tonight by the fact that Councillor Timon nearly ran out of time outlining his proposal, and I think that's partly the point, that surely the outturn should just be about the outturn, and if there are items for decisions relating to capital projects, then they should be coming forward separately so that they can have the detailed discussion and voting on at meetings. And interestingly, the items on the capital projects have to be decided tonight, otherwise we'll be running out of the deadlines, etc., to meet them, and that just seems rather chaotic, and we can't really have any proper discussion on them because they're all wrapped up in this one item, and that perhaps says something about the chaotic nature of this administration. So this amendment just ensures that in future any decisions relating to capital projects will be will be separate from the outturn so they can have the proper attention they deserve. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Yeah, I rise. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and very happy to second and reserve my right.
I now open the debate on the amendment. Councillor Timon?
Thank you. Yes, I apologise. I ran a little bit short of time, but most of what I was saying was only repeating what was in the report. So if people had read the reports properly, I don't think you actually lost anything from the fact that I couldn't speak for another minute or two. I think what I would like to point out on this is that it's actually been a long-term situation where changes to capital expenditure have gone into not only an outturn report, but to every single monitoring report that takes place during the year. Many of those are quite technical. There are things like putting money in to transport budgets, to health capital budgets, to schools capital budgets. I'm certain that we do not want officers to be spending a lot of time writing reports for that sort of capital expenditure. I'm insistent already, and the finance team know, that I'm not prepared to put into the monitoring reports anything that requires prudential borrowing. Therefore, commitments to the long-term budgets and expenditure of the council. I think that would be wrong, and I'm not prepared to let that happen. But I do think that we need to use this mechanism, certainly for low-value projects. I think with the benefit of hindsight, you could argue that something of the size of the coastal defence thing perhaps deserved a separate paper, but in fact, a business plan has been attached here. So you've got quite a lot of information, even though it's come through this mechanism rather than a separate report. I don't want to commit our officers to time writing reports unnecessarily. I'm going to ask at the moment my colleagues to vote against this recommendation, but I will take it away and discuss with the finance team whether we should be making any restrictions in future of what comes through this mechanism to make sure that members from both sides of the chamber have full transparency and ability to discuss what's going on. If we make some changes, I'm sure that we can discuss those at one of our leadership groups and come to an accommodation. But I'd certainly like my finance colleagues and other officers to comment on the extra amount of work that it would take them. Where that's worthwhile, where it isn't, remains to be seen.
Thank you. Councillor Cowell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think transparency in terms of our capital programme is absolutely critical. And I think whilst there is a very detailed and technical business case attached to the outturn report in terms of the Paignton and Preston defence scheme, which everybody supports. We are 100% behind it. That process for that project was kick-started a few years ago under the previous administration, as we all know, and from what was going to be a bland seawall to the exciting project that there is now is testimony how to consult properly. So there is unanimous support for the scheme. I think sometimes the executive summary of a report is actually very useful for some people because it does lead to suggestions of where to go. I would challenge anybody in this room who has read that entire report in its absolute finite detail, and if they have, how many questions has it brought to their mind and raised with officers? There will be some. But the principle, I think, is what we're trying to establish here. Now, clearly, the numbers tonight will mean that it will be voted down. And I would suggest that it's actually a matter to be referred, not just with the feedback from directors and other officers, but it needs to come through the council leadership group. And I have to say, whilst we're talking about capital projects, the previous 2 agenda items where we were unanimous in our support for the delivery of those 2 capital projects are fine examples of how this council can work together, and we just need to extend that to how we operate as a council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add extremely briefly, just as I spoke earlier, in relation to a previous amendment, supported the principle there but couldn't support the wording here. Exactly the same, support most of the principle here but can't support the wording. So look forward to, I heard Councillor Timon allude to, just as Councillors Long and Cowell did, some work to go on behind the scenes. Look forward to that. I'm sure that will resolve things. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more debate on the amendment? Councillor Penny, you reserved your right.
I did indeed, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much indeed. I agree with Councillor Long. Not going to repeat what he had to say. You've heard it. I agree with Councillor Cowell. Not going to repeat all of that. I agree with it. Interesting to hear that Councillor Timon does recognise that there is scope for discussion. The scope of discussion is perhaps somewhat different from the format we have here. If that scope for discussion goes through properly, great, job done. And job done successfully and together. That would be fine. I think, anyway. I believe that under the current arrangement, it deflects from the monitoring report. Everyone says, whoa, £17 million. Fine. Lovely. Big sum. We all know it. We're all mostly in support of it anyway. It just extends that report, and in that particular case, it wouldn't have added to the officer's role. They just put on item number 17, that particular project. Accordingly, therefore, I still basically stand by what we have written. I understand the prudential borrowing side of the matter, the need clearly on I've forgotten the word. I do this a lot. The word goes out of my head. I have sympathy for Joe Biden, you understand, at this moment of time. Very rarely would I say that, but I do have actually sympathy for him. Never mind, I'll move on very quickly, because you get what I'm going to say. Anyway, I do support this motion, this recommendation here. If it does not get through, I'm being practical, and if we therefore together can move it forward and through to the group leaders' meetings, wonderful. I move the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Long, your right of reply.
I just want to say one thing very quickly, in that I have been very critical in the past of the number of documents that this council produces, and I note that I'm pleased that Councillor Timon wants to reduce the amount of time that officers are writing reports, and so that is music to my ears. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go straight to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And the amendment is lost. Is there any further debate on the original motion? Councillor Long?
It was just to say that I remember distinctly when the first Outturn report was presented to this administration, that Councillor Tyman was very critical of the previous administration for having overspends in other departments and then relying on the finance team to bail them out, bail us out, as it were. And of course, that is exactly what has happened under this administration on this Outturn report. So I'm just noting that to myself more than anything else, that despite that critical comment, that hasn't happened this evening. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further debate, Councillor Thomas, you reserved your right.
Thank you very much indeed. I wasn't going to speak on this one. However, there was a comment earlier about Councillor Tyman running out of time. And he does occasionally run out of time. That's only because he's doing a thorough, detailed, rigorous and meticulous report. And I hope that everyone will support this outturn. Thank you.
Councillor Tyman.
Yes, I'm afraid, in reply to Councillor Long, I just have to say, perhaps it's because of my age as well, I'm beginning to sometimes wonder exactly what I did say at certain times. I think I certainly might have made some comment about that. I'm not sure it was so much as a criticism as a statement of fact. And I'll also point out that, of course, the performance of this year, the year we've just finished, was basically a budget that was set by the previous administration, not by this one anyway. You always have that in transfer over from one to another. So trying to take the thing apart and trying to put blame one way or the other, I think is a waste of time. The fact is, I think that officers did a pretty good job over this last year in keeping our overspends to a much lower level than was being reported by many other councillors, both locally and across the land. I think the financial management of Torbay Council, both under the previous administration and running into what we're doing on this administration, is obvious, is creditable. It really has put us in a position where going forward and looking at next year's budget, I think we will be under a lot less strain than many other councils. And I think that means that we can once again look forward to few, if any, cuts in vital services to our residents. Until we complete the budget, I can't say there'll be nothing, but the forecast looking forward looks hopeful, and we're in a good position. And I have talked to one or two of my counterparts in other authorities, and they're all worried about what's happening next year. So I think overall the performance is good, and I think we should give that credit. And I think giving that credit to our officers and bringing us in an underspend for the year, even if a lot of that did come from good treasury management, is creditable, really is creditable. And I commend that we take the vote and support this and convey our thanks to our officer colleagues at the same time.
Thank you. So I move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? And the motion's carried. I move to item 14, Constitution Amendment, Officer Scheme of Delegation. Please refer to page 155 and revised Appendix 1, published on the 17th of July 2024. Can Councillor Tyman please put his motion to Council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. They come thick and fast, don't they, for me to get up and speak. I don't intend to, hopefully, use up my time this time. Councillors, you may remember that I think it was back in February at Council, we put forward changes to contract procedures. In a sense, what's before you tonight is a bit of a follow-up to that, because when we changed contract procedures to modernise them and bring them up to date with modern legislation, we did not change the scheme of delegation. And I think that discussions about increasing the limits where officers can take decisions, and we're talking about decisions that are within their budgets, not outside of their budgets, has been discussed over a number of years, and actually the levels in Torbay Council are significantly lower than in many of our neighbouring councils, both district councils, county councils and unitaries elsewhere. An awful lot of, again, report writing takes place to bring things to Cabinet, and as is pointed out in the papers here, they never have not been agreed by Cabinet. What we feel is we can simplify the thing, leave the same lower limit of expenditure of 50,000 in place, but put in a category that doesn't exist at the moment, where proposal to spend are brought to the relevant Cabinet member for them as a consultee to say they're happy with it. If they feel uncomfortable about what's being proposed, they may well decide to refer it on to come to Council with a full report. But that's what we're putting forward today. I think that's going to allow quicker decisions, slicker decisions, and reduce, for Councillor Long's benefit, some of the report writing. So I hope you will be happy with this and accept it.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel that Councillor Timon has described the motion really comprehensively, so I really have no more to add and happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite debate. Councillor Long.
Thank you very much. It was just to say that we'll be supporting this this evening, but it was just to note that I understand that the paperwork that went to Cabinet was not the correct paperwork, but it has been updated for this meeting now. So that was my understanding anyway. But anyway, we're supporting it anyway.
Councillor Penny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My opportunity to forget something again, just to keep everybody happy, but I'll be also much shorter. I tend to agree with Councillor Timon, he said, quietly. For the simple reason, I heard that, for the simple reason, it's a logical thing to do. Keep up to date, keep up to speed, talk about the slickness of approach, quick decision-making, relevant decision-making at the right level. All for it. There is a second part to that, of course, and that's who is going to do what. And I only have just one query or question, really, that's all, out of all of this. And in some ways you may consider it as a minor matter. It's not. It's actually quite important about definitions. When it comes to this sort of semi-legal stuff, definitions are very important. Halfway down this new paragraph within Section 1, General Scheme of Delegation, blah, 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 at 1.3, about halfway down the page, when we're talking about the sum above 50,000 per annum, duration of contract between £200,000 and £1 and 500,000, it's in consultation with the relevant member. The word relevant normally gives a measure of wiggle room, shall we say. What is relevant to me may not be to you, what's relevant to you may not be to me. I would therefore prefer to see the word responsible on here and a little later down the page when we're talking above schemes totally above £500,000, the relevant member. I would like to see the word responsible member, unless there is already within the rules and regulations here in this council definitions of these various words. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Timon?
Thank you. Two points to deal with. I'll take the most recent one first. Somewhere, if you want to hunt through it in the Constitution, there is a definition of relevant member. A relevant member means, for executive functions, the leader of the council or any cabinet member to whom he or she has delegated the relevant function. So the reason why in here it's referred to as the relevant member is actually quite deliberate. It fits in with there, and it defines it as being the leader of the council or a cabinet member who he's given responsibility for a specific area. Relevant member in other situations can mean something slightly different. It can be a relevant member as a chairman of a committee. But in terms of these executive functions we're talking about here, it is quite clear what the meaning is. I hope that suffices. If I then move on to Councillor Long, actually, you got it wrong, I'm sorry, because this didn't come to Cabinet. Constitutional amendments go direct to Council. It was discussed at a private Cabinet meeting with directors, and at that stage, papers were changed, or the recommendation was changed. Unfortunately, what was first issued in the Council papers was the unchanged version. Right? So it wasn't a via Cabinet problem, it was a straight issue to Council problem. I think our Chief Executive has already apologised for that having happened. But I think we have to say that our Democratic Services team have probably been so tied up with a snap election having been called that perhaps this isn't the only mistake having been made, as I learnt to my detriment last week when should have had a virtual parking pass, didn't stop me getting a parking ticket. And I know one of my colleagues along the front row here has had one this week. But we've resolved those, and again, I think it's just something that slipped through. Things do, slip-up made. We brought it to your attention as soon as we reasonably could, and thank you for accepting the amendment to come through. That's allowed us to deal with it rather than, if I don't mind saying so, waste more time by putting it off to the future when we want to get on making changes and making the council more efficient as quickly as we all can. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. I move to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous and the motion is carried. I move to item 15, urgent council decisions taken by the Chief Executive. Please refer to page 175. This report is for noting and no vote is necessary. Thank you, members, for your attendance today. I now close the meeting.